My name is Paul Sanders. I'm the Group Financial Controller for a number of companies in New Zealand, in the Robertson group of companies, mainly involved in hoteling. We have 3 ultra-luxury lodges in New Zealand, Kauri Cliffs, Cape Kidnappers and Matakari Lodge. We also have a couple of golf courses at those properties, and we have a few other businesses in the wine industry and in farming, cattle and sheep. We started to use Yellowfin about 3 years ago. When I arrived at Cape Kidnappers a year or so before that, I found it extremely difficult to produce reporting for our management, reporting that was accurate, reporting that was done on a timely basis, and reporting that didn't require a huge amount of manual input. A lot of keystrokes, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of time, and also a lot of scope for error. We looked at a number of companies that might be able to provide a product to us that could make that process a lot easier. And having looked at a number of products in detail, probably 5 or 6, chose Yellowfin. We went with Yellowfin because it struck me that it was the one that was probably going to be the easiest one to use after the consultant went out the door after the first week. So we could continue to create our own reports. We don't have to run back to Yellowfin every time we want to write a report. We write them all in-house ourselves, and it's been a great product for us. Well, like a lot of medium-sized businesses, our headcount ranges from 125 in the winter to 250 in the summer. It's obviously a hoteling operation, so very seasonal. We have probably about 30 or 40 managers within that 250, and they needed information as well as, of course, our board of directors. Prior to adopting Yellowfin, most of it was by printing out reports from our various systems. For example, we print a report from our general ledger system, print another report from our payroll system, print another report from our hotel management system. Someone would have to take those 3 pieces of paper, open up a spreadsheet, and then have to collate data from those 3 sources. A lot of columns and rows of data being put onto a profit and loss statement, for example, where you can imagine how long that would take and how the scope for error was enormous. So we found that with Yellowfin, instead of having to get a hard copy of each of those 3 reports from each of those 3 systems, we can get Yellowfin to connect to each of those systems. It extracts the data that we require, and then through the Yellowfin engine, we can create a report, or rather get Yellowfin to create a report for us automatically. And we can do lots of clever things like filtering. So if we want a report that says, tell me all the data for November, then we can produce a report for November. If we want to say, I want to see the last 12 months, we just change the date parameter and we get a 12-month report, or a 3-month report, or a 6-month report. So a lot of flexibility, and basically it means that we have killed a lot of spreadsheets, which I'm glad to say we have done. We're a lot more accurate, and it's a lot faster. And it's been a huge boon to our business. Well, I think that's just, there's a couple of things around just reducing the scope for errors in your reporting, because we did have an instance under the old system where one of our clerical people created a report, and she actually put the data in for a particular month twice. So the report was inaccurate to quite a big extent. And because our information was it wasn't easy to drill down into the information and really understand the data, it was very difficult to pick up the fact that there was an error. In fact, we didn't pick it up for a couple of months, that she'd reported something incorrectly. With Yellowfin, we don't have to, we have the ability to see things that don't look right up front. So what it means is when we're at the review stage of creating a report, we know the information we're seeing in the Yellowfin report is accurate, and if the data looks a bit wonky, we can then go back to the source system and see, did the data that went into the source system in the first place, is that where there is a problem? And quite often we discover that there might be a problem in the source system. So Yellowfin's been very useful for that, from that perspective. We do a lot of studies, we produce a lot of information in regard to cost per guest. We're in the hoteling business, so we like to know things like cost per guest. We like to know things about revenue per guest. We like to know things about source, where did they come from, which travel agent is producing information, the country they come, what countries do they come from, what's the rank of popularity. For example, US is generally #1 in the summer, New Zealand is #1 in the winter, Australia is #2 in the winter generally, UK is #3 or #4 in the summer. We get all that kind of statistical information out. We also produce information at a manager level. Reports get sent out to managers automatically every day that will show what was the average rate yesterday, and they can see how the revenue is tracking. And if the average rate looks a bit strange, the manager then can go into the underlying database, into the system, and see, well, did we record that incorrectly? Did we charge the guest incorrectly? Maybe we haven't billed everything that we should have billed, so it helps us enormously in picking up that sort of thing very quickly. We also produce reports where things look outside the norm. So with Yellowfin, we can produce a report that is kind of a what if, sorry, not a what if. We can produce a report that is only triggered when a certain event happens. So for example, if a cost was more than X% of another figure, we would get a report that would be generated by Yellowfin as an exception report, and that would be automatically sent out to the manager concerned, so they could look and understand why there was an outlier. It could be it's real, or it could be there's some sort of data input problem from our front desk, for example. I suppose for me personally is the ability to drill down is a hugely important aspect of Yellowfin. For example, if we get we can run a payroll, we can see all the costs by department. And what I can then do is, if I want to understand why the costs are up or down compared to last year, for example, I can click on department name, and I can drill down into that department. I can see all the names of the individual employees, how many hours they've worked, and we can see who's worked a lot of hours, so we can start to understand why our costs may be up or down. As an example, we produce a lot of, as I said earlier, statistical information, so we can see how many guests we have had in over time, and what kind of accommodation they're in. Are they in the deluxe category? Are they in a standard suite? We can see whether they've paid rack rate, meaning they've paid the retail rate, or whether they've gone through a travel agent and they're paying a net rate, like a net 10% rate, which means that the travel agent is in effect getting a 10% commission. Those kinds of, that kind of information is generated automatically and very valuable for us. Yes, Yellowfin, I guess particularly when we first got Yellowfin, we got a consultant to come and spend a week with us. So I spent a week with this person in the room back at one of our properties, and he helped produce the first suite of reports, and I sat at his shoulder and watched what he was doing, which was a great thing because A, we got some reports out very quickly, and B, it was the launching pad for me, because then I could understand the product a lot better, and I started to be able to create reports myself. So that was very good at that level. And then I also find that the support you get when you send in a query to the support team, very responsive. You get an answer back usually within 24 hours. Someone will write back to you, and they will investigate things for you. So, and if there's a problem, they say if there's a bug, they'll take it on board and they'll say, right, that's going to be fixed in the next release, which comes out next month, for example. So I found the support very good. I can contrast that with some other IT suppliers, names of which I won't mention now, who are the rest of the rest is kind of average. Yellowfin does stand out. I think the support is really good.